About 3 weeks ago, a friend of mine from South Africa shared a news article about somebody that I know and went on a fishing trip who had pulled up next to his girlfriend in traffic and shot her through the window of her car, and then driven off a few kilometers down the road in the Fourways area and turned the gun on himself. And then about a week later, I heard another story about somebody who had been found in the swimming pool of their home with a domestic worker, maybe having some sort of love affair. This had resulted in an argument with his wife, and he had, after that, then at an airfield, got into an aircraft and drove the aircraft with himself in it into the clubhouse of this airfield, and obviously taking his own life and fortunately not killing anybody else. But it really started activating something in me that got me thinking about a few things. And I spent a lot of time unpacking this stuff, especially because I knew the guy in the first story who had shot his girlfriend and then himself. We had been on a fishing trip together, and who knows what drives us to do these things. But as I've been unpacking this with Araminta, my partner, she's really quite smart when it comes to sort of the soul work and all of this stuff, which I don't know very, very much about. But one of the things that she said was this idea of integrating our masculine and our feminine energies in some ways. And first of all, having feminine energy wasn't even something that I had any idea that I had in my body for most of my life. I was a male, and that was it. And we had to show up as men, and we had to be tough, and we had to not show too much emotion, and we always had to have this idea of, we've got this sorted. And you look around and you see other men and no one's saying anything, and we're just assuming that everybody else has got it sorted, so we need to have it sorted. And there's sort of a compounding effect between not being able to talk about things and creating a space where we can be vulnerable to have conversations about when we don't have our shit together, and we're human beings living in a difficult environment, in a difficult world. We're not expected to always have our shit together, and to be able to have a space where we can show up and have an open and honest conversation that sounds like, you know what, at the moment I actually don't have my shit together, my business is fucked, I'm a mess because of my marriage, whatever it is, to be able to create the space to be able to have those conversations it feels like a really important thing for men in particular to be able to do. The other reason I mention this male and female energy component is that for many men, I think specifically me and a lot of men in South Africa, we have a strong energy around making sure that we're men. And things like embracing our feminine energy, or this idea that maybe there could be some sort of an attraction to another man in some way, even if it's not necessarily sexual, or if it was, to be able to take ownership of that is something that I think probably just gets completely squashed, because in a lot of environments, that's not something that's going to be tolerated. And if we are suppressing that energy in ourselves, there's a potential opportunity for us to become really hardened, and on the outside, really strong boys and men that just continually have to be men and can't talk about anything that shows any form of weakness. And I think over many years, and depending on the world that you're in, and depending on what your societal frame has been that's installed, that says, you know, you cannot be homosexual, you can't even think about this idea of loving or having feelings for another man in any other way except as a boy, where you fucking knuckle each other on the heads and talk about sport, really can create a space where you can become so hard, and you can turn almost in the opposite direction and suppress that stuff so much, and you become more of a man's man and more of a dude, you know, that at some point your soul no longer wants to be in that body because it's suppressed so hard, and you potentially do something silly like turn a gun on yourself so that that energy can somehow fucking escape. And I don't know if that is the reason, but it seems pretty possible that it might be. And it's activated something in me that's got me thinking that I'm not sure exactly what to do about it, but I'm feeling pretty called to do something about it. And I guess a lot of that has to do with me learning how to make sure that my masculine and feminine energies are properly integrated, and to be able to accept and know what those two energies are, and the fact that they're normal and they need to be respected, and they're both healthy and they're both normal and we all have them. And to do that work so that I can document my journey into this idea of being a more integrated person and trying different things and experimenting with different things. Some of the stuff feels like work I've got to do. And when I was in an Easter retreat, about, some of you may know, it was about 6 weeks ago, one of the things that we did was a men's circle. And one of the things that we did there was, as men, we stood up and we spoke about what it's like to exist in a world in a man's body, and some of the challenges that we faced, and some of the shame that we don't have a space to be able to talk about. And it's probably one of the most powerful things I've ever done. And at the same time, that vulnerable piece, the piece that there's other people that are suffering the same things that we've all been carrying for so long, feels like it could heal the world if we created the space for us to be able to be open and completely honest about how we feel inside in every single moment. So I just wanted to share that. It's super alive in me at the moment. Like I said, I'm not too sure what to do with it, so I thought I would talk about it. As I was editing this vlog, I wanted to just make sure that I'd been 100% clear that I wasn't in any way making an implication that either of these two men who tragically took their own lives were harboring any of those emotional examples that I used. It was more just to say that I think men in general have really not really had a place to be able to talk about any emotions. And since filming that vlog, which has been about a week ago now, I have been doing a little bit more research on this topic, and I found a really interesting Netflix documentary called The Mask You Live In. And it talks about this global potential problem of how we're raising our sons in a world where it's not always that easy to talk about your feelings. So if the topic interests you, people a lot more wise and a lot more eloquent are unpacking that in that Netflix documentary. And it's a really interesting watch if this topic resonates with you in any way. Chat to you soon. Ciao, ciao.